I recently discovered a no-code tool that you absolutely must start using right away. And the best part of it all is that it's absolutely free. And so in today's video, I'm going to be showing you what the tool is, and I'm also going to be teaching you how to use it by giving you several usable app examples. Now, before we get started, as always, all the apps and all the resources that I cover on this channel are going to be available to view and or clone from my Patreon page. And you can learn more about it using the link in the description below. So the tool I recently discovered is called N8N, and this is a workflow automation for technical people, okay? And so this allows you to build complex automations 10 times faster without fighting APIs. Your days spent slugging through a spaghetti of scripts are over. Use JavaScript when you need flexibility and UI for everything else. And so it's open source, full source code is available. You can also self-host it, and we'll talk about that in just a second. And so here's a little kind of a screenshot, a little video, a little animation of how it works. You can do some really amazing automations with it. And it's very similar to a tool that I covered recently on the channel called Make.com, formerly known as Integromat. And stay tuned a little bit later in the video. I'll talk about the differences between this tool and the tool that I covered previously. Okay, you definitely want to hear that. Okay, so you have different features, you have use cases, lead automation, supercharger, CRM, limitless integrations, backend prototyping, set engineering. This is a very, very useful tool. And instead of me talking about all the different features and the use cases, let's start using this tool, and that way you can see it firsthand how it works. Now, let's say you want to get started with this tool. Well, you can go into pricing right here, and you can look at different pricing tiers. So there's a starter for 20 euros a month, Pro 50 euros a month, Enterprise, and that's about it. Now, they all have free trials, which is nice and all, but still, you know, you want to get started, you might want like a free tier, right? And you don't see a free tier. Well, if you scroll down, there is a community version, which is a basic version of N8N, which is available on GitHub. And so this version is free, but you have to host it yourself. And so when it comes to hosting a tool, you have two options. One is that you can set up your own server, you know, set this up, download it from GitHub, do all the hosting, but it's a very, very technical, and it requires a lot of steps, and it, you know, you have to configure web service and all that. But fortunately, there's a much easier one-click method that you can essentially take this tool and host it for absolutely free. And the way we're going to be hosting this tool is by using an amazing service called Railway. And what this amazing service allows you to do is that it allows you to take any tool out there that's open source or not even open source and host it without getting bogged down with all the technical stuff, without dealing with servers and hiring server admins and all that stuff. It's very, very easy. Okay, and so what you need to do is you need to sign up for your account. Once you sign up for your account, you're going to go in the dashboard. Now, as you can see, I already have a bunch of projects here. So I am using this tool for my other projects as well. It's an amazing tool. And what you need to do is you need to go here on new project here. And the next thing you want to do is click here, deploy a template, and you're going to search for this tool, N8N. You're going to click here. And you're going to see a screen that looks something like this. Now, it's telling me where should we clone this repo, because before it can deploy it, it needs to clone it somewhere locally. And I have my GitHub account, which is this one right here, connected to Railway. And GitHub is also free. They have a generous free plan that you can use here as well. So go ahead, sign up for GitHub. Once you sign up, you can connect it here, and you can specify by default, this is going to be the name of the tool here, specify exactly how I have it here. Now, we have to configure a couple of things here, right? We need a username and a password so that we can log in to this newly created installation of this tool that this whole process is going to do for us. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say James, and for password, I'm just going to say James as well. Don't tell anybody, but that's my password. We have one pre-configured environmental variable. This is this port right here. And right now you can just leave this on default. We're going to change a couple of settings afterwards. And now simply click on deploy. So we're going to deploy right here. And now, as you can see, our new app instance is deploying for the very first time. So we're going to wait a few moments. Now, as part of the deployment process, you are given a random URL that you can access your newly deployed app. And you can obviously change it. You can go into settings and you can click here and you can specify a custom domain that you own that you want to point to this app. And you can also modify this by clicking here and changing it to your liking. Now, before you run your app for the first time, there's one more thing that you need to do. Go into variables, click on raw editor, remove everything that you have there, and you want to paste what I have here. You want to paste this and make sure that this line right here reflects the randomly generated URL or host name that you were given here. And then you can click on update variables. And now you are ready to use your app. So we're going to click here and we're going to be redirected to our own private instance of N8N. And on the left-hand side, you have workflows, you have templates, credentials, variables, all execution. And so right here, you can start creating your workflows. But before we do that, let's take a look at some of the possibilities by going into templates. So if you click on templates, you can see the various things that you can do. So you can create an API endpoint. You have OpenAI GPT-3. You can convert JSON to an Excel. You can do so many things, and really the possibilities are endless. This is a very, very powerful tool that could do pretty much anything that you throw at it. And so let's try creating a very, very simple workflow. And then a little bit later, we're going to create a more complex workflow as well. So we're going to go into workflows. We're going to click on start from scratch. And here's where we can create our first workflow, right? So if I click on here, I have options as my first step. So when you think about the first step, this is either going to be something that's going to run on a scheduled basis, maybe every day, every month, several times a day, every hour, etc. Or it's going to be something that's going to run as a result of something else. So maybe a webhook. Maybe you're sending data to it and it's going to run it. And last but not least, this could be a manual workflow. So something that's going to run when you click on something, when you tell it to run essentially, and that's when it's going to run. So in this example, let's create an app that uses OpenAI's GPT-3 to do some kind of a calculation. So we're going to come in here and we're going to say on webhook call, and after you add a webhook, you now need to configure it on this screen. So remember, what is a webhook? A webhook is a module that gets activated when it gets a request sent to it. And so for instance, here we have a URL that if you send data to it, it's gonna, capture this data and it's gonna execute your workflow, okay? So let's create a sample flow where we send to it, for instance, some kind of data, and it's gonna respond with some data back to us, okay? So we're gonna say authentication is none, HTTP method is get, that's fine. And for the path, I'm gonna modify. So in this case, I'm just gonna put 1, which means like the first workflow. And when you modify it, you see the URL is changed. This is the URL, because before it was something like this. And if you exit out, you see the URL. So it's modifying the URL. And how do we wanna respond? Well, we can respond immediately. We can respond when the last node finishes, or we can respond using a respond to webhook node. In this case, we're going to use this last option here, and we're going to configure that node to do that. But right now we are done. So we're going to exit out, and now we have the first node set up. Okay. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to add another node. I'm going to search for respond. And this is this response to webhook node. I'm going to click here. Now, instead of sending test data to this module like you typically would do, we can actually execute this node to output data, or we can just insert test data. And so here's some test data. This is a sample JSON object here as an array with one element that, essentially an object with name and code. I'm going to delete code, and I'm going to say, let's say name is James. Okay. We're not seeing any errors. I'm going to click save. And this is the output right here. So assuming that we send data and we got output, this is our output. And now I can go back to this node here, and right away I see the input here, our fake data, right? So let's say I have this, and let's say I want to respond using JSON, or maybe I just want to respond using text, and I can drag and drop it right there, and I just map some data. And now I can easily execute this node for testing without sending any data first. This is very, very useful. And so I can click on execute node. It takes that sample data and it's going to execute just James, because that's essentially what happened, right? Now I can go back here, I can double click, and let's say I want to edit the data I'm going to be sending. So let's say I also want to send the age. Let's say the age is 50 as an example. Now we have an array, one object named James, age 50. We're going to exit out. We're going to save. And now I can go back here. And now I can respond with something else. I can also respond with JSON. So I can do something like this. This is my JSON. And now I can create an object. So I can say, name, and then age, whatever. So I can just drag and drop this right here, right? Copy this, paste it right there. And same thing for age. Paste it right there. Okay. And now I can execute this code. So let's see if that works. We're going to execute this. And now we've just created a sample response that takes the data that we sent in the first node. Very, very easy. And you don't need to send any data at all. You can just use, test data. Very, very simple. Now, let's say you want to actually send some real data to it using an API. So you want to send some data and you want to respond with some of the data that was sent in. Well, that's also very, very easy. So we're going to double click on this. We are going to specify it a post request because we want to send some data in the body of the request. And authentication is none. We're going to say, listen for test event. We're going to be given a URL. We're going to copy this right here. We're going to paste it up on top. We're going to change this to post, and we're going to construct our simple request. So as you can see, this is a JSON request with a name set to James. This is listening, and we're going to execute this right here. We're going to wait a few moments. Okay, and it's telling us workflow executed successfully. Now we can go back and we are seeing this data right here. So you can see it in table format, JSON or schema. Click on JSON. And you're seeing the body right here, right? The body name is James. So that means that we're getting the data correctly. And this data is going to be used as an input for the next module, right? So we can exit out, come to this respond to webhook. And when we are here, we can see the data that we received here. Very, very useful. And so in this case, I can just delete all this. And I just want to respond with just text. And I'm going to just drag and drop name right there. Okay, so that's just going to respond with James. That's it. So now I can even execute this node using this data that we got. Check this out, executing this node. And so now our workflow is ready. We can click on execute workflow here, and it's waiting for the trigger event. We're going to go right here. We're going to send our trigger, send our request. And we get back James, which is exactly what we expected to happen. Now, it's important to mention that all of the requests that we've been sending was via a test URL, because if you click here, you have a test URL and you have a production URL. So if you want to use the production URL, you click here, copy this, paste it here. Essentially, you can just remove test here. And now what you can do is you're not going to click here. You're going to just make it active. So you can just do that. And now it's active. So that means it's always listening. And now you need to be sending using the production URL, not the test URL anymore. So we're going to send a request using the production URL. Now I'm going to send this right here. And we get back the same result. And we can also click here on executions. And we can see the execution. We should have that one execution. We can click here. We can see that we send name equals James. You can click here and you can see name equals James here. So everything adds up. Everything is perfectly fine. Now in this next example, we're going to create a sample workflow that uses AI chat GPT that we are going to connect with FlutterFlow. So here's our workflow that we created in the previous example. And what we're going to do is we're going to add another module in the middle here. So we're going to click this plus sign here and we're going to search for OpenAI, or you can just type ChatGPT. We're going to click here. We're going to click here, create a completion. And the next thing that you want to do is you want to connect it with your account. So I already have my credentials here, but you can simply click on create new credential and enter your API key. You can simply Google for OpenAI API keys if you're not sure where exactly to generate your own API key. Once you've done that, you can configure this OpenAI module. So this module has all of the familiar things if you've been working with ChatGPT before, including the model that we have here. Now, if you click here and add message, you can configure your message. You want to pick user, and for the content, what we're going to do is we're going to execute previous nodes here to get that content the way it's set up. And so it's executing previous nodes. We're going to send a sample request. In this case, we're going to change it to question, what is the capital of Mexico? Okay, we're going to send it over. And it says here, workflow executed successfully. And now it got the data. And so now we know where in this JSON format is the field that we need to map. So we're going to drag and drop it here. And now we can execute this node here with the data that we've gotten before. So we can actually execute this node. We're going to say execute node. And it's executing this current node right now. And we get back Mexico City. So now we know this works. Now we can exit out. And we can click on execute workflow. So we're going to click on this. It's waiting for the trigger event. We're going to send this test event now. And it's telling us the capital of Mexico is Mexico City. And so now that we've tested this workflow, you can activate it here. And now you can go into FlutterFlow, create a very, very simple app. So here I have a sample page. You take input and you display the answer here. So it sends a request. Let's go ahead and configure our API here. I'm going to add an API call. We're going to do post. We're going to click here, switch to production URL, copy this, and go back to FlutterFlow and paste the URL. I'm just going to call it API. Next, we're going to create a variable that we're going to capture from the user, question, string, add call, create the body, which is JSON, drag and drop this question here, click save, and now we can do a response and test. We're going to click here, and I want to return a response in JSON format. So I'm going to do JSON, and I'm going to format this. I'm going to say answer, grab this, put it in here, save that, exit out, save this, and now let's go ahead and test the app. What is the capital of Mexico? Send the test API. And there's our answer. And so now what we can do is go to recommended, select it, come here, give it a name answer, and now we can reference this. So now we can go back to our app. We're going to capture this. We're going to come here, add an action, API, call, open this, specify our API, create a page variable here real quick, come in here, answer var. We're going to say string, say confirm. Go back here, open this up, we get a response. We're going to set it to our variable here, page state, update page state, answer var. We're going to set value, and the value is going to be action input, and we're going to go into JSON body, JSON path, answer, confirm. And so once we get an answer, we're going to update our page variable, and this is going to get data from the, not page parameter, page state, answer var. Let's double check our request, open this. We need to send a variable here, question, widget state, input question. Okay, looks good. Go ahead and try our app. All right, and here's the app. Let's ask it a question. What is the capital of Norway? Send a request. The capital of Norway is Oslo. And if we go back into our flows and click on executions, we should see that execution right here. So there's the execution. We can click on this. And as you can see, there's the request that we sent. What is the capital of Norway? Click here. There's the response, and there's the response to webhook. This is the webhook right here. So as you can see, the app works perfectly fine. So that is a very, very simple example just to kind of show you how you can send simple requests and get a simple response. Let's try something more complex now. So I'm going to go into my workflows, and I'm going to add a new workflow, okay? Now, for the second workflow, we're going to create something a little bit more complex. So here's a Google Sheet with two columns. We have the first column, which is the question column, and we have like 4 questions. And the second column is called answer, and there are no answers here. And so the idea is we're going to create a workflow that's going to read all the questions, send them into ChatGPT, get a response, and put the responses here. So you can think of it as kind of this batch chat GPT workflow where we can send a bunch of questions to it and get a bunch of responses back. And this is actually very, very easy to do with this amazing tool. So the first thing you want to do is you want to click here, and we're going to do a manual workflow. We just want to click on it, and we want the whole thing to process our data and give us the right answer. So we're going to click here manually. And the next thing that we want to do is we need a node that's going to read from our Google Sheets. So we're going to click here. We're going to type Google. And if you type Google, check this out. Check all of these things that it supports. And this is just from Google itself, right? Take a look at all of this. And so if you type Google Sheets, you can click here, and now you need to decide, well, what do you want to do with Google Sheets? We want to read all the rows. We're going to click here, and now we need to configure this module, and obviously we need to make sure that it can connect to our Google Sheets, right? So if you click here, we don't have any credentials. We're going to create a new credential, and we're going to select this option here, and now what we need is client ID and client secret. And so where are you going to get this information? Well, you're going to get this by going to Google Cloud Dashboard. So you can simply Google for Google Cloud Dashboard. You're going to pick the project that you want to be working with. And if you've been building NoCode apps or FlutterFlow apps, you should probably have a couple of these projects configured already. If you do not, then you want to just create a brand new project. And I have a ton of videos that cover it all. You can see one of the videos right here. But for now, I have a project here that I use from time to time. And what you want to do is you want to go to API and Services, and you want to click on Enable APIs and Services. Next thing you want to do is search for Google Sheets. You want to click here, and you want to click on Enable. I already have Manage. That means I enabled it, but you're going to have something like Enable or Enable this API, okay? So once you enable it, you can click on Manage, and you can click on Credentials here. And the next thing you want to do is you want to add a new credential. So you're going to click on Create Credentials. You're going to pick this. You're going to pick Web Application. You can call it whatever you want. And what you need to do here is you need to go back to N8N. You're going to copy this thing here, add URL right here, click Create, and you're going to be given client ID, client secret that you need. So you're going to copy this client ID, paste it in here, go to this client secret, copy that, paste it in here, and now you want to click on Sign In with Google. So we're going to sign in. I'm going to log in into my account, and it's telling me that the Google has not verified the app. That's fine. You're going to click on Advanced, click here, click Continue, and now it says your account is connected. And so now the app that we're building, the workflows, they have access to your Google Sheets. And so now it's very easy for them to get the right data and do all kinds of interesting things with it. So we're going to get out of this. And now what we need to do is we need to pick the resource. We're going to pick Sheet within Document. We're going to say Read Rows. And the document, we're going to say by URL, because I know the document. I'm going to copy the URL of this, paste it in here. And now we need to pick the sheet. And here you can do from list if you want. It's going to load all your lists. I have just one sheet, sheet one. And at this point, you are pretty much done, okay? This module can now read your data. And you can also execute it if you want. So we're going to execute it right here and see if it can actually access the data. And there's the data. So it's accessing the data perfectly. That means we can work on the next module. So we're going to exit out. Click here. You can search for OpenAI. Click on OpenAI, go down to where it says create the completion for chat actions. Click here, click on select credential, create a new credential. Now you need to enter your OpenAI API key. This is my OpenAI API key, and you can Google for the page where you can generate new API keys. Click save, and right away it's telling us that connection tested successfully. We're going to exit. And now we need to create a prompt, right? So we have the models here. We're going to pick this default model, and we're going to add a message. So now we can pick assistant, system, user, which are kind of the different roles that we can send messages. Assistant is going to be the messages sent to us by the bot. System, it's kind of like the main prompt, and user is the message that we want to send when we want the system to do something. So we're going to pick user, and the content is going to be the question. So we're going to put the question right here. And so now, once you've configured this, you can execute this node so that it can just run this OpenAI ChatGPT node using the data that we already have. And this is really, really nice because I don't need to test the whole workflow. I can test piece by piece, module by module, making it a lot easier for me to work with. So let's see if this works. What is the capital of France? Anyone know? Let's hope it knows. Execute this node. And so it went ahead and it executed ChatGPT for all the rows that we specified, which is even better because now we can compare the data and see if it's correct. So it's telling us the capital of France is Paris. And then it also has some of the other responses for some of the other rows, okay? And so we're going to exit out. And now we need one last model that's going to write the answers back into that spreadsheet, okay? So we're going to click here, search for Google Sheets. And what we want to do is we want to update a sheet. So we're going to update a sheet right here. And we have this credential set to Google Sheets account, Sheets within document, that's fine. Operation update. And which document? Well, we have the URL, so we can just copy this right here, paste it in here, and then we're going to pick the document, the sheet. And now what we need to do is we need to specify how we want the data to be updated. So we're going to select map each column below, and we're going to match the question to the answer, right? So we're going to select this column to match. We're going to pick question. Now for value of column to match on, we're going to go back and we're going to pick the previous module, right? And this is this question right here. Because we have the answers, but we need to pick the right column in order to put the answer. We don't want the answers to be mixed up with the questions, right? So we need to find that specific row of that specific question and then put that answer right there. So that is why we need the original question. And then here for values to send, we can just add a field. We're going to pick answer, and then the value, we're going to pick OpenAI, one node back, and we're going to select content right here. Okay, and that's it. As you can see, it's green, which means that everything is fine. And now let's go back and see. We don't have any answers here, right? And so if we execute this node, it should run the whole thing and give us the answers that ChatGPT gave us. And so right now you are seeing the output here. And if you go back, you are seeing the answers that it gave us. So what is the capital of France? The capital of France is Paris. How can I take over the world? That was kind of tongue-in-cheek. As an AI model, I cannot provide suggestions. How many countries are there? I do not have the exact answer. Okay, so these are valid answers. And give me 5 titles for a video about no code. And so it gave us 5 titles. Now, if we go back here, we have our entire workflow. We can kind of arrange it all nicely. We can save it. And this is a workflow that's going to get triggered every time we say execute workflow. So if you go back here and you delete this and we come back here, we execute it, it's going to rerun it. And look at this. It's showing the part that is running. It's showing how many items we're getting. So OpenAI is running now, thinking, getting the answers that we need, and now updating Google Sheets. Okay, so if we go back, we have the answers, we have the data. It's slightly different, but that's absolutely normal. And as you can see, it's really, really powerful, and it's very, very easy to build some very interesting workflows. Now, granted, this is still a very simple workflow, but if you check out the templates, there is some very, very complex workflows in there that can do some amazing things. But one thing I want you guys to check out really is, first of all, you're seeing the check marks. That means every, this specific module executed successfully, and pretty much all the modules executed successfully. And the other thing that you want to pay close attention to is the items, right? So if you take a look at Google Sheets, this module here gives us back 4 items. So this part here is going to be executed 4 times, right? We got 4 items here. So this is going to run 4 times, and this is going to run 4 times, right? Because we have 4 items here, right? So it's going to execute 4 times. And obviously you can add more modules here. You can simply click here and you have, you can do action and app. You have all of these connectors here, Gmail, Google Ads, you name it. You have helpers, you have flow, files, you can add another trigger. You can do so many things. In fact, I actually plan on doing a much more comprehensive video in the future. So if that is something that you might be interested in, make sure to give this video a like. If I see at least 1,000 likes, I'm going to be doing a very, very comprehensive workshop when it comes to this very, very powerful tool. Now, how does this tool compare to Make.com or Integromat, as it was formerly known? Well, in my opinion, Make.com is more user-friendly. This is a little bit of a more technical tool. So Make.com, in my opinion, is probably maybe a little bit easier to get started with because you don't need to self-host it. You can simply sign up for their generous free plan and start using this right away. But if you're looking to try something different, something free and open source, even if it requires you to self-host it, then I would highly suggest you give this tool a try. And really the best way to know which tool is right for you is to start using it and see which tool you're more comfortable with. Because I can tell you, there are some things that are much easier to do with this tool, and there is also some things that are much easier to do with Make.com. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video and you're looking for more content, more information, and more training, make sure you check out our amazing Patreon community, because when you join our amazing Patreon community, not only will you get access to all the apps that I publish on this channel, you can simply view and or clone them, but you also get access to some other content such as Q&As, live streams, behind the scenes content, and our incredible Patreon supported masterclass series where we do a deep dive on a specific topic that the community votes on. Plus, when you become a member of our amazing Patreon community, you're going to be supporting this channel and supporting my work, which is highly, highly appreciated. And so if all of this sounds like something you might be interested in, then definitely check out our amazing Patreon community via a link just below this video. Also, if you haven't yet seen my overview and tutorial of Make.com, which is another tool that I highly, highly recommend, you can check out that video right there.